The shape of what remains you shouldn't have come back, she says, not looking at him, her hand still resting on the spine of a book she hasn't opened in years. The room holds its breath. Outside, something metal clatters in the wind, then settles. He doesn't answer right away, and in that small delay, everything that might have been forgiven begins to rearrange itself into something else. He closes the door behind him without turning the handle all the way. It remains slightly ajar, a thin seam of gray light marking the gap. He notices it and leaves it that way. I didn't know where else to go, he says. She gives a small, almost private shake of her head, as if correcting a thought she hasn't shared. Her fingers slide along the book's edge, then lift, then settle again. The cover is worn smooth in places, the title long since faded. That was always your talent, she replies, arriving as if the world had narrowed to a single address. He takes a step forward. The floor answers with a soft complaint. He remembers that sound. He remembers where it will come from even before it happens. I can leave, he says, though he doesn't move to do it. She turns then slowly, not with surprise, but with something more deliberate. Her face has changed in ways he cannot immediately name. There are lines he does not recognize, but her expression, he knows that. He has known it in anger, in laughter, once in something like tenderness. You already did, she says. The words do not rise. They settle between them, level and precise. He almost smiles, not from amusement, from the recognition of a pattern. Yes, he says. I suppose I did. There is a chair near the window. He does not sit in it. He stands, his hand resting on the back, as though the gesture might anchor him. The room is smaller than he remembers, or perhaps he is larger in it now, carrying more than he did before. The shelves along the far wall are crowded, books in uneven rows, some stacked horizontally, filling the gaps. A framed photograph he cannot quite see from where he stands. Is it still broken? He asks, nodding toward the window latch. She follows his glance. For a moment, her face empties of everything but attention. No, she says. I had it fixed. Of course. He releases the chair. His hand leaves a faint mark in the dust. They stand there, measuring the distance. It is not far. It is exact. You look, he begins, then stops. Say it, she says. He considers the options, rejects each one as it forms. You look well, he says finally. She lets out a breath that might be a laugh if it had more warmth in it. That's a kind thing to say, she replies, and not quite true. He nods. He accepts the correction. You look, she continues after a moment, as though you've been somewhere difficult. I have, he says. And I'm finished with it. She tilts her head, just slightly. You say that as if it were a place you could leave? It was, he insists. And now you're here. Yes. They fall quiet again. The silence is not empty. It presses, testing the edges of what they might still say. She moves away from the table, crossing to the far wall. He watches her as she reaches for the photograph, lifts it, studies it for a second too long. Do you remember this? She asks without turning. I can't see it, he says. She hesitates, then brings it over. Not close enough to touch, close enough for him to recognize the image. A shoreline. Gray water. The suggestion of wind in the angle of their bodies. They are younger. That is not the most striking difference. He leans in slightly. You kept that, he says. I keep things, she replies. He looks at her then, not the photograph. I know. She lowers the frame. Holds it at her then, not the photograph. I know. She lowers the frame. Holds it at her side. You don't, she says. Not really. He could argue. He doesn't. Why did you come back? She asks. It is the question he expected, the one he's been rehearsing without admitting it, for the length of the journey. I heard about your husband, he says. There is no visible reaction. Not at first. Then a small shift, almost imperceptible, in the set of her shoulders. You heard, she repeats. Yes. And that was enough. It was a beginning, he says. She places the photograph on the table, face down this time. He died 3 years ago, she says. You're late. I know. Do you? Her gaze sharpens just a fraction. I didn't come for that, he says. No? She replies. Then for what? He exhales, slowly. For you. The words sound different once spoken, less certain, more exposed. She studies him, not his face exactly. Something just beyond it. That's a dangerous answer, she says. I didn't come with a safe one. She walks past him then, close enough that he feels the movement of air. She stops near the door, looks at the narrow opening he left. You always did leave yourself an exit, she says. He glances at the gap, then back at her. I can close it, he offers. Can you? There is no challenge in her voice, only inquiry. He moves toward the door. For a moment, it seems he might follow through. Then he stops, his hand hovering near the wood. If I do, he says, will you ask me to stay? She considers that. Not quickly. I might ask you something else, she says. Like what? She meets his eyes. Why now? She says. And whether it matters. He lets his hand fall away from the door. That's fair, he says. Yes, she replies. It usually is. They return to the center of the room without agreeing to it. The space between them closes slightly. Not enough to touch. Enough to change the air. Why now? She says again. He does not answer immediately. He looks around, as if the room might provide a language he has lost. I thought I had more time, he says. For what? To become someone who could come back here without… He stops. Without what? Without asking for anything, he finishes. She nods, slowly. And you didn't manage that, no. And yet you came, yes. She turns away from him again, but not fully. Half of her remains, angled in his direction. Do you know what I did, she says, after you left? He shakes his head. No, I learned how to be very careful, she says. With my days, with my words, with the shape of things. He listens. He does not interrupt. It's not as small a life as you might think, she continues. There's a kind of discipline to it, a dignity even. I don't think it's small, he says. She glances at him. No, she says. You think it's temporary? He opens his mouth to protest, closes it again. I don't know what I think, he admits. That's honest, she says. At least. There is a softness in her voice now, not forgiveness, something adjacent to it. You could sit, she adds, gesturing toward the chair. He hesitates, then does. The wood creaks under his weight. It feels like an acceptance of terms he has not fully heard. She remains standing. That's new, he says. What? You offering me a seat. She allows herself a faint smile. I'm older, she says. I've learned some manners and patience. Some, she replies, not in excess. He nods. Some, she replies, not in excess. He nods. He understands. Tell me something true, she says. He looks up at her. Only one thing? We'll start there. He considers. The room waits with her. I thought about you, he says. More than I should have. She does not react. Not outwardly. And she prompts. And I told myself it didn't matter, he continues. That memory is just a habit you can break if you're disciplined enough. And were you? No. The answer arrives without resistance. She takes that in, holds it, sets it somewhere he cannot see. That's also honest, she says. He leans back slightly in the chair. I don't know what I expected, he admits. Coming here. That's becoming a theme, she says. Yes, and yet you're still here. He meets her gaze. So are you. The words hang between them, quieter than the ones before. She walks back to the table, turns the photograph face up again. Studies it. I didn't expect you either, she says. He feels that more than the sharper lines she has drawn. No. No. She traces the edge of the frame with her finger. I had an idea of how my life would continue, she says. It was not dramatic. It was not particularly joyful. But it was stable. And now you're standing in my doorway, she says, asking me to reconsider something I worked very hard to put away. He absorbs that. He does not try to soften it. I know, he says. Do you? Yes. She turns to him again. Then say it, she says. Say what it is you think I'm being asked to give up. He takes a breath, holds it, releases it slowly. Certainty, he says. She nods almost imperceptibly. Yes, she says. She says. That's part of it. And safety. Yes. And the version of yourself that doesn't have to account for me. She watches him closely now. That's a larger part, she says. He leans forward, his hands resting on his knees. I'm not asking you to give those things up, he says. No, she replies. No. Then what are you asking? He hesitates. Not from lack of words, from the weight of them. I'm asking you, he says carefully, to consider whether they're enough. The room seems to shift again, though nothing moves. She studies him for a long moment. Longer than before. You're very late, she says again. I know. And you think that matters less than it does. I don't know how much it matters, he says. I only know it doesn't erase what was there. She looks down at the photograph, then back at him. It erases some things, she says. Yes. And distorts others. Yes. And leaves a few intact, she adds. He nods. Yes. They hold each other's gaze, not with urgency, with a kind of measured attention. Which are we? She asks, in your version of it. He answers without looking away. The last kind, he says. She lets out a slow breath. That's a hopeful answer, she says. It's the only one I have. She considers that. Then, hope, she says quietly, is a difficult thing to reintroduce. I'm aware. Are you? He almost smiles again. Yes, he says. I've had some practice with difficulty. She studies him as if weighing the truth of that against the cost. Stay, she says finally, though the word is not quite an invitation. For a little while. He does not move immediately. The permission, such as it is, takes a moment to settle. For how long? He asks. She glances toward the window where the light has begun to thin. Until it's clear what you've interrupted, she says. And then? She meets his eyes, steady as before. And then we decide whether it can continue, she says. There is no promise in it, no guarantee. He nods. All right, he says. Outside, the wind lifts again, rattling something loose. The door shifts slightly on its hinge, widening the gap he left. Neither of them moves to close it. Chapter 2. They do not sit down to dinner. That would suggest a plan, a shared understanding of time. Instead, she moves through the kitchen with the quiet efficiency of habit, taking things out, putting them back, as if testing the weight of ordinary gestures against the presence of him. You still keep everything in the same place, he says from the doorway. I don't, she replies. You only remember what stayed. He watches her open a drawer, pause, then close it again without taking anything. There is a small, contained restlessness in her movements. Do you want tea? She asks, not looking at him. Yes, he says, though he doesn't. She fills the kettle. The sound of water is louder than it should be. It covers the silence just enough to make it bearable. You can come in, she adds. Standing there makes it seem as if you're waiting to be dismissed. Aren't I? She turns then, one eyebrow lifting slightly. Is that what you're doing? She says. Or is that what you want me to do? He considers that, then steps into the room. Neither, he says. I'm trying not to assume anything. That's new, she replies. He leans against the counter, leaving a careful distance between them. I've had time to practice, he says. She sets the kettle on the stove and lights the burner. The flame catches with a soft, controlled sound. Time seems to have been very educational for you, she says. In some ways. And in others? He looks at her. I'm still here, he says. She absorbs that without comment. There is a small table by the window. 2 chairs. She gestures toward it. Sit, she says. He does, this time without hesitation. The chair is lighter than the one in the other room. It shifts slightly under him, a quiet instability. She remains standing for a moment, watching the kettle as if it requires supervision. Then she sits across from him, folding her hands on the table. This is where we used to argue, she says. He glances around. We argued everywhere, he replies. Yes, she says. But here we finished things. He nods. He remembers the particular intensity of this space, the way words would gather, sharpen, and then land. Do you want to finish something now? He asks. Her mouth curves, not quite a smile. Let's see if we can start something first, she says. The kettle begins to murmur, a low, rising sound. Tell me about the place you left, she says. The one you're finished with. He watches her for a moment, as if measuring how much she is prepared to hear. It wasn't a place, he says, Not really. No, she replies. You said that already, but you spoke about it as if it had walls. It did, he says, just not the kind you can see. She tilts her head. Go on. He rests his hands on the table, palms down, as though grounding himself in the surface. I was married, he says. The words land with less force than he expects, perhaps because they are not new to her. Perhaps because of everything that has already been said. Yes, she replies. I assumed. He looks up. You did? You don't disappear for that long without building something, she says, or pretending to. He nods. It wasn't a pretense, he says. At least not at the beginning. And at the end? He exhales slowly. At the end, it was mostly silence, he says. Structured, polite silence. We became very good at it. The kettle reaches a soft boil. She stands, pours the water into 2 cups without asking how he takes it. She remembers. Of course she does. And she says, returning to the table, is she part of what you've left? He wraps his hands around the cup. The heat is immediate, almost too much. She died, he says. She died, he says. There is no movement from her this time, only a stillness that feels deliberate. When? She asks. A year ago. She nods, once. I'm sorry, she says, and the words are not empty. Thank you, he replies. They sit with that for a moment. Not avoiding it, not dwelling. What was her name? She asks. He hesitates. Not out of reluctance, but from the sense that naming her here changes something. Anna, he says. She repeats it quietly as if testing the shape of it. Anna, she says. Was she kind to you? He considers. Yes, he says. In the ways that mattered, and in some that didn't. And you, she asks, were you kind to her? He does not answer immediately. I tried, he says. I think I succeeded most of the time. That's not the same as being, she says. No, he agrees. It isn't. She lifts her cup, takes a small sip, then sets it down again. Did you love her? She asks. The question is direct. It asks for something he cannot soften. Yes, he says. She watches him carefully. And yet you're here, she says. Yes. There is no accusation in it. Only a recognition of complexity. People don't like that answer, he adds. No, she says. They prefer their stories to be cleaner. And you? I prefer them to be true, she replies. He nods. Then yes, he says again. I loved her. And do you still? He looks at his hands, then back at her. And do you still? He looks at his hands, then back at her. Yes, he says. But not in a way that asks anything of me now. She considers that, her gaze steady. That sounds convenient, she says. It's not, he replies. It's what's left. The room settles around that. The kettle cools. The small domestic sounds recede. Did she know about me? She asks. The small domestic sounds recede. Did she know about me? She asks. The question arrives quietly, but it shifts everything. He takes a breath. Yes, he says. Her expression does not change. But something in her posture tightens, just slightly. And what did you tell her? She asks. The truth, he says. Which version? He almost smiles, though there is no humor in it. The one where I lost you, he says. She looks down at the table, tracing a faint line in the wood with her finger. And how did she feel about that? She asks. She thought, he says slowly, that I had been foolish. A small pause. And was she wrong? She asks. No, he says. She nods as if that confirms something she already knew. Did you try to find me? She asks. The question lands with more force than the others. Yes, he says. When? Years ago, he replies. Not at the beginning. Not when it would have mattered most. And why then? He meets her gaze. Because it started to feel like a mistake I couldn't live inside anymore, he says. She studies him. And now, she says, you think you can live outside it? I don't know, he admits. I only know I couldn't stay where I was. She leans back slightly in her chair, creating a little more distance. That's not the same as choosing me, she says. No, he agrees, it isn't. Then what is it? He searches for the words, finds them, rejects them, tries again. It's choosing to see what's still here, he says, if anything is. She holds his gaze for a long moment. That's not a small question, she says. I know. And you expect me to answer it. No, he says. I expect you to refuse it. A flicker of something crosses her face, not quite surprise. That would be the safer option, she says. Yes. And you've already established how much I value safety. I have, he says. She looks at him, really looks, as if trying to locate the person she once knew inside the one sitting across from her. You're asking me, she says slowly, to reopen something that cost me a great deal to close. Yes. And you don't know what's inside it anymore. No. She nods. That's honest, she says again. They fall quiet. Not the earlier silence, full of unspoken words. This one is more deliberate, as if both are considering the same narrow path from opposite ends. Why didn't you stay away? She asks at last. He does not pretend not to understand. Because staying away started to feel like a decision, he says, and I realized I had never actually made it. She tilts her head. You just drifted into it, she says. Yes, and now you're drifting back. I walked this time, he replies. The correction is gentle, but firm. She lets out a soft breath. That may be worse, she says. Why? Because it suggests intention, she says, and intention is harder to forgive. He accepts that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he says. No, she replies. You're asking for consideration. Yes. She looks down at her cup, now half empty. You always did know how to phrase things, she says. It's not phrasing, he says. It's all I have. She lifts her eyes to his. That's not true, she says. No, no, she repeats. You also have the past, and whatever version of it you're choosing to bring with you. He leans forward slightly. I'm not choosing a version, he says. I'm trying to face the whole of it. That's ambitious, she replies. It's necessary, he says. For you, she says. Yes, and for me, he pauses. For you, he says carefully, it might be unnecessary. She studies him, weighing that. Then why involve me at all, she asks. Because you're already involved, he says. She shakes her head, a small, precise movement. I wasn't, she says. Not until you walk through that door. He does not argue. He cannot. You're right, he says. The admission lands softly, but it matters. She stands then, taking her cup to the sink. He watches her rinse it, set it aside. I built a life here, she says, her back to him. It may not look like much to you, but it holds. I don't think it's small, he says again. That's not the point, she replies. The point is that it doesn't depend on you. He rises from his chair, the movement quiet but decisive. I don't want it to depend on me, he says. She turns, leaning back against the counter. Then what do you want, she asks. The question is the same. The answer is not. I want to be part of it, he says. She lets that sit between them. That's not a small thing either, she says. No, he agrees. And you think it's possible? I think it's uncertain, he says. And that's the closest I can get to honest. She considers that, her expression unreadable. Uncertainty, she says. You're offering me a great deal of it. Yes, and very little else. He holds her gaze. I'm offering you myself, he says. The words are simple. They carry more than they should. She looks at him for a long time. Long enough that he begins to feel the weight of what he has said. That used to mean something different, she says finally. I know. And now? Now it means exactly what it is, he says. Nothing more. She nods slowly. That may be the first thing you've said that I believe completely, she says. He almost smiles. I'll take that, he says. A faint sound comes from the other room. The wind again, nudging the door further open. The seam of light widens. She glances toward it. You should close that, she says. He follows her gaze. I thought you might want it open, he says. For what? She asks. An exit, he replies. She looks back at him. Or an entrance, she says. The distinction hangs there. He walks to the door. This time, he does not hesitate. He places his hand against it and gently pushes until it clicks into place. The sound is soft but final. When he turns back, she is watching him with an expression he cannot quite read. Is that your answer? She asks. It's a beginning, he says. She considers that. Then beginnings, she says, have consequences. I know, and endings, she adds. Yes. They stand facing each other, the room now closed around them, the outside held at bay. Stay, she says again, more quietly this time. He nods. For a little while, he replies. She shakes her head almost imperceptibly. No, she says. Not like that. He waits. If you stay, she continues, you don't leave tonight. The words settle, heavier than before. And if I do, he asks, what does that mean? She meets his eyes. It means we find out whether this was a mistake, she says, or something worse. He holds her gaze. And better, he says. She does not smile. Don't add to the terms, she replies. He nods. All right, he says. The house is quiet. The door is closed. The past, whatever shape it takes, is no longer outside, and neither of them moves to reopen it. Chapter 3. He does not ask where to sleep. The question lingers, unspoken, as the light drains from the rooms and the house settles into its night shape. She moves through it without ceremony, turning on a lamp here, another there, until the darkness is softened but not erased. You can take the spare room, she says at last, as if responding to something he has not said aloud. He nods. Thank you. It's not generosity, she replies. It's logistics. Of course. She pauses at the foot of the stairs, her hand resting lightly on the banister. For a moment, it seems she might say something more. Instead, she turns and begins to climb. He follows at a distance that feels measured. The hallway above is narrower than he remembers, or perhaps memory has been widening things for him all along. A door stands open at the far end. She gestures toward it. There, she says. He steps inside. The room is simple. A bed, neatly made, a chair, a small table with a lamp. Nothing extraneous, nothing left by accident. You keep it ready, he says. For visitors, she replies. And do you have many? No. He turns to her. Then why, because it should be possible, she says, cutting him off gently. Even if it isn't likely. He considers that. The room feels like a thought she has chosen not to abandon. It's a good room, he says. It's adequate, she replies. They stand there, just inside the doorway. The distance between them is smaller than it has been, but no less precise. There are towels in the bathroom, she adds. Second door on the left. Thank you. She nods once, then turns to go. At the threshold, she stops. You can leave in the morning, she says, her back still to him. The words are even, not unkind. If you want to, she adds. He watches her, the outline of her in the dim hall light. And if I don't, he asks. She is quiet for a moment. Then we'll see, she says. She does not turn around. She walks away, her steps quiet on the wood. He stands in the doorway until the sound fades. The bed is unfamiliar. That is not unusual. What is unusual is the way the unfamiliarity seems to sharpen everything else. He lies on his back, eyes open, listening to the house. There are small sounds, a pipe settling, the faint shift of something in the walls, the kind of noises that belong to a place that has been lived in long enough to have a language of its own. He remembers other nights. Not here. Not exactly. But close enough that the difference feels deliberate. He turns onto his side, closes his eyes, opens them again. After a while, he gets up. The hallway is dim, the light from below rising just enough to guide him. He moves quietly, though there is no reason to. The house does not feel like something that requires silence. It feels like something that notices it. He passes her door without stopping, or rather, he slows, then continues. The distinction matters to him. The stairs creak under his weight, a familiar protest. In the kitchen, the air is cooler. He pours a glass of water and drinks it slowly, standing by the sink. The window above it reflects him back, faint and indistinct. You always did have trouble staying where you were put? Her voice is soft, but it carries. He turns. She stands in the doorway, one hand resting against the frame. She is wearing a robe, loosely tied. Her hair is unpinned, falling in a way he has not seen before, or perhaps has and does not remember correctly. I could say the same for you, he replies. She steps into the room. I wasn't put anywhere, she says. I chose it, and now I'm in my kitchen, she says. In the middle of the night, talking to someone who should be asleep. He almost smiles. I couldn't, he says. No, she replies. I didn't think you would. She moves past him, takes another glass, fills it, drinks. They stand side by side at the counter, not touching. This is familiar, he says. Yes, she agrees. That's the problem. He sets his glass down. Do you want me to go back upstairs? He asks. She considers that. Would you sleep? She asks. No. Then no, she says. Stay. He leans back against the counter, mirroring her posture without quite meaning to. I used to think nights were honest, he says. She glances at him. Why nights? Because there's less to distract you, he replies. Less performance and more imagination, she adds. Yes. She takes another sip of water. Imagination can be dangerous, she says. So can clarity, he replies. She sets the glass down. Is that what this is? She asks. Clarity. I don't know yet, he says. She studies him, her gaze unhurried. You said you thought about me, she says. She studies him, her gaze unhurried. You said you thought about me, she says. Yes? At night? Mostly. She nods as if that aligns with something she expected. And what did you imagine? She asks. He hesitates, not from reluctance, but from the sense that the answer will change the room. You, he says. Here, or somewhere like this. That's vague, she replies. It had to be, he says. Anything more specific would have made it unmanageable. Unmanageable for whom? For the life I was living, he says. She turns slightly toward him. So you kept me at a distance, she says. Yes. Even in your thoughts? Yes. She considers that. That's a kind of control, she says. It's a kind of fear, he replies. Of what? He meets her eyes. Of discovering that what I had wasn't enough, he says. She holds his gaze. And did you discover that? He does not look away. Yes. The word settles between them, heavier than it should be. She turns back to the counter, her fingers resting lightly on the surface. That's a difficult thing to live with, she says. It is, he agrees. And now you're here, she adds, testing a different version of the same problem. He lets out a slow breath. Yes? She is quiet for a moment. I didn't think about you at night, she says. He absorbs that without flinching. No, he says. No, he repeats. I made sure of it. How? She gives a small, almost rueful smile. Discipline, she says. You'd be surprised what becomes possible when you decide something is no longer available to you. He studies her. And was it, he asks, no longer available? She looks at him then, directly. No, she says, it wasn't. The honesty lands cleanly. But I treat it as if it were. She continues. Because the alternative was, she stops. Was what, he prompts. She shakes her head. Unproductive, she says. He almost laughs. That sounds like something you learn to say, he says. It is, she replies. It's a useful word. It keeps things contained. And you prefer containment. I prefer survival, she says. The word hangs there. Yes, he says quietly. I see that. She looks at him, her expression softening just slightly. Do you? She asks. I think I do, he says. She studies him, as if testing the truth of that. You weren't here, she says. You don't know what it cost. No, he agrees. I don't. And yet you're asking me to spend again. He does not answer immediately. Yes, he says. She lets out a breath, something between a sigh and a release. Yes, he says. She lets out a breath, something between a sigh and a release. That's remarkably consistent, she says. In what way? In your ability to arrive with requests, she replies. He nods. I won't pretend otherwise, he says. She pushes herself away from the counter, taking a step into the room. Tell me something else that's true, she says. He straightens. All right. She waits. He considers. I was afraid to come here, he says. She tilts her head. Of me. Of what you might see, he replies. And what is that? He holds her gaze. The parts of me that haven't changed, he says. The says. She studies him carefully. And have they? She asks. Some, he says. Not enough. She nods slowly. That's also honest, she says. They stand there, the space between them charged but still intact. I was afraid too, she says after a moment. He looks at her. Of what? Of this, she says, gesturing lightly between them. Of you standing in my kitchen asking me to reconsider a decision I've been living inside for years. And now that I'm here, she considers. I'm still afraid, she says. The admission is quiet, but it alters something. He takes a small step closer, not enough to close the distance, enough to acknowledge it. I don't want to make this harder for you, he says. She lets out a soft breath. That may not be within your control, she replies. Probably not, he agrees. A faint smile touches her mouth, then disappears. At least you're not pretending otherwise, she says. No. They fall quiet again, but it is a different kind of silence. Less defensive, more attentive. You should try to sleep, she says. So should you, he replies. Yes, she agrees. I should. Neither of them moves. After a moment, she steps past him, heading toward the door. Good night, she says. Good night. She pauses at the threshold, then turns back. If you're still awake, she says, don't come looking for me. He meets her gaze. All right, he says. She holds his eyes for a second longer, as if deciding whether to add something. Then she shakes her head almost imperceptibly and leaves. He stands in the kitchen for a while after she's gone, listening to the quiet return. Eventually, he turns off the light and makes his way back upstairs. He does not sleep. The hours pass in fragments. He drifts, surfaces, drifts again. Thoughts come and go without settling. At some point, he hears movement in the house. Not loud, not furtive. Simply present. He lies still, listening. A door opens, closes. Footsteps in the hallway. He waits. The sound approaches, then stops outside his room. There is a pause, long enough to register as intention. Then, softly, a knock. He sits up. Yes, he says. The door opens just enough for her to stand there, framed in the dim light. I changed my mind, she says. He swings his legs over the side of the bed, his feet finding the floor. About what? He asks. She looks at him, her expression steady, but not guarded in the same way. About waiting, she says. The words settle into the space between them. He stands. What do you mean? He asks. She opens the door a little wider, but does not step inside. I mean, she says, that if we're going to find out what this is, we shouldn't do it cautiously. He studies her, the shift in her tone, the clarity of her gaze. And how should we do it? He asks. She holds his eyes. Honestly, she says, even if it costs more than we expect. He feels the weight of that. And you're ready for that, he says. No, she replies, but I'm willing. The distinction is precise. He takes a step toward her. That's enough, he says. She nods. For now, she agrees. They stand there, the threshold between them charged with something neither of them names. What do you want to ask me? She says. He hesitates. Not from lack of questions. From the knowledge that this one will change everything. Why didn't you come after me? He says. The air shifts. She absorbs the question without flinching. I almost did, she says. He waits. More than once, she adds. And why didn't you? She looks at him, her expression steady but something deeper moving beneath it. Because I knew, she says, that if I came, I wouldn't leave again. The words land with a quiet force. And that would have been a mistake, he says. Yes, she replies. He studies her. And now, she holds his gaze. Now, she says. Now, she says. Now, she says. I don't know. The uncertainty is not weak. It is exact. He nods, slowly. All right, he says. She watches him as if waiting for something more. And you, she says. Why didn't you stay? The question arrives without warning, though it has always been there. He feels it, the full weight of it, the absence it names. I thought I was choosing something better, he says. And were you? He looks at her. No, he says. She takes that in, her expression unreadable. Then why does that feel? She says quietly, like it matters less than it should. He does not have an answer for that. They stand there, the night holding them in place, the past no longer distant enough to ignore. Come downstairs, she says suddenly. He blinks. Now? Yes. He hesitates only a moment, then nods. All right. They move together into the hallway, the house receiving them again, as if it has been waiting. Neither of them speaks as they descend the stairs. In the living room, the lamp still burns, casting a low, steady light. She crosses to the table, picks up the photograph, and turns it toward him. Look at it, she says. He does. The shoreline, the wind, the distance between them and the frame that once felt small. What do you see? She asks. He studies it, then looks up at her. I see two people, he says, who don't understand what they're about to lose. She holds his gaze. And what do you see now? She asks. He hesitates. Two people, he says slowly, who might be about to make the same mistake again. She lets out a breath, something like a quiet laugh, though it carries no humor. Yes, she says, that's what I was afraid of. And now. She sets the photograph down, but does not look away from him. Now, I'm not sure I care, she says. The words hang there, dangerous in their clarity. He feels something shift, something irreversible. That's not like you, he says. No, she agrees. It isn't. She takes a step closer. But then, she adds, neither is this. The distance between them narrows, not by accident, not by drift. He does not move away. Are we about to make a mistake? He asks. She meets his eyes. Yes, she says. A pause. And are we going to stop? He asks. She holds his gaze, steady, unflinching. No, she says. The answer settles, final in a way nothing else has been. And in that moment, with the house quiet around them and the past fully present, neither of them steps back.